Legend of Zelda is a series that many people, myself included, hold very near and dear to them. And it's because of this that people are seemingly incapable of not constantly arguing with each other over what works and doesn't work within this series. It seems like whenever a popular YouTuber makes a video about Zelda that even hints at their opinion on this debate, flame wars erupt in the comments and people are left unsatisfied. So, with the first real HD Zelda on the horizon, slated for this year, I couldn't help but start thinking about the ways in which the series could change and improve to become, well, let's say, less controversial. For as great of a series as Zelda is, it's not perfect, and there are quite a few areas where it could benefit from change, whether that be because of legitimate problems or simply stagnation. I feel like these are all important changes that need to be made for future installments, so there isn't really much of an order to them, so I guess this is more of a list than a countdown. Regardless of that though, these are my top 10 ways that I think the Legend of Zelda series could change for the better. Throughout this list, I'm going to be saying some things where I'm not entirely sure how the general populace is going to react. I know a good amount of people will agree, just not everyone. Even with that though, I think that this is something that anyone who has played recent console Zelda games can agree with. The intros are too fucking long. There are really two factors at play here, tutorials and story. Out of all people, I like to think that I'm more kind to tutorials than most, but it doesn't change the fact that an excess of them is definitely detrimental to the overall fun of the series, and makes the games get going slower than if they weren't there. I don't think it shouldn't be there, but the briskness of the game's opening could definitely benefit from the ability to skip them. That, I believe, would be something that everyone could agree with. Story, on the other hand, is a much less simple ordeal. Now, I'm hardly the kind of person that thinks that having no story in these games would be a good idea. Hell, I think that'd be a terrible idea. However, I do think the story is treated with too much importance, at least at the beginning. The pinnacle of this would be in Skyward Sword. Get used to hearing me talk about Skyward Sword because I'm going to be doing it a lot in this list. Anyway, Skyward Sword has a really long intro, and the majority of it is taken up by story. I wouldn't have much of a problem with this if it wasn't for the fact that so much unnecessary crap happens here. Like, seriously, did Link's Loftwing really need to get stolen? Was that really important? I get that they share a special bond or whatever, but still, did that really need to happen? I'm not even saying that a long intro is such a bad thing. In fact, Majora's Mask did it brilliantly. I know that some people don't enjoy how you can't save until after it's over, or something else like that, but personally, I feel like it went a long way to set up the world and characters within it. I guess what I'm trying to say here is to make the intro that the game needs, and to make it as short as possible. If the story is just a Link going on a quest to beat an evil thing, then get the ball rolling quickly. If it's something a bit more than that, like in Majora's Mask, then maybe extend things a bit, but try to keep things brief. Unlike this segment. Seriously, I'm tired of talking about intros, let's move on. This is sort of a strange problem that I haven't heard that many people talking about, but it is something that I have seen become a problem in the series. The different unique races are there, but they have absolutely nothing to do. Let me backpedal some. The Zelda series is home to some of the more interesting creatures that I've found within games as a whole. I really do have to commend Nintendo for making a fantasy game and not resorting to some of the more generic race tropes like elves, dwarves, orcs, etc., though some of the races are pretty damn similar to them. Specifically, the most engaging of them would have to be the Deku Scrubs, Zora, Goron, Sheikah, and Gerudo. They're all interesting visually and have some original capabilities and personalities, and for a while, this was taken advantage of. This reached its peak in Majora's Mask where, excluding the Sheikah, they were all shown to have their own unique civilizations and dilemmas. It gave a certain amount of depth to them that hadn't been seen before or since. Since then, they've all become fan favorites, and because of it, they pop up in pretty much every new Zelda game. As I said before though, the problem arises from the fact that they don't really do anything. This is seen worst with the Gorons, where in both Wind Waker and Skyward Sword, There are very few of them, and the only purpose of them being there is for fan service. Another is with the Sheikah. I get that they're supposed to be ninjas or whatever, but a lot of the time, the representation that they get is often with only one or two of them the whole game, or even worse, just random symbols of them plastered everywhere. There's fan service, and then there's just being random, and this is definitely the latter. My main problem with this stems from the fact that there is a lot of potential for them to be explored. Like, the Gerudos only produce a single male child every 100 years. Hey, that's a pretty interesting concept that could be explored more. A fucked up one? Definitely, but still interesting. It's things like this where, if the different races were to be explored in a more in-depth fashion, it would go a long way to making them feel as though they aren't just there because it's a new Zelda game and that there's actually some amount of meaning to their appearance. Maybe the new Zelda could incorporate some kind of classical RPG party system that lets you fight alongside some of these characters, but that's just an idea and definitely a long shot. Honestly, just as long as I don't need to help Gorons get a stable supply of rocks to eat again, I'm good on this one. Like, seriously, how the hell does that even work? Video games as a medium have, since their inception, gone a long way in becoming more respected in the general populace. Sure, there are still those old farts who will say that games will never be an art, but to say that is to completely ignore some of the more incredible experiences that have come from it, such as games like Shadow of the Colossus, The Walking Dead, and yeah, even Zelda. However, one problem that does arise from this is that, to accommodate for the larger demographic, game devs often make their games far easier than they really should be. Sadly, this has found its way into Zelda 2. Not Zelda 2 though, that game is still fucking brutal. Now, before you start yelling at me about hero mode or 3 heart runs or whatever, this isn't just about flat difficulty, it's about challenge as a whole. What's the difference? Think about difficult as a boss that takes several attempts for you to beat, whereas challenging is one that takes you down to low health, but you're still able to beat it in the end. The reason that things like hero mode and 3 heart runs fail to help in this regard is that they're entirely based around numbers. I've always found that a truly challenging experience comes from how it's designed as opposed to the numbers of it. Like, fighting an Iron Knuckle isn't a fun and challenging experience because you lose 4 hearts when you get hit by him. It's because it's an intimidating enemy, and you need to be aware of both your surroundings and your movements if you want to defeat it. This is why I feel that enemies that require you to fight dynamically, either strictly with swordplay or with their items, are entirely better than ones that you can just slash your sword out a couple times and they're dead. And obvious weak points don't help either. This doesn't just apply to enemy encounters though. I've also found that the puzzles in these games have gotten too easy. As a wise YouTuber once said,
"They're almost always well designed for what they are, but they're more about making the player feel smart than actually requiring them to be smart."
It's hard to explain how this could be fixed. I could very well just say, make the puzzles harder, and have that be that, but that gives literally nothing to the situation at hand. If I could give some kind of suggestion though, the puzzles throughout the game should take advantage of all the player's items and skills up to that point. A certain amount of emphasis on the newest item is reasonable and it can even come to be expected, but the way it currently is kind of ridiculous. I also think that we need to move away from sliding block puzzles. I know they've been around since the very first game, but seriously, they take no advantage of the player's capabilities in any of their numerous forms, and I just find them annoying, so can we please let go of them?
Let it go, let it go.
No! No! No!
Many things within Zelda have become staples of the series as a whole, many examples of which are the items. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a lot of these items. I can hardly imagine having a brand new Zelda game come out, and having things like the bow, bombs, hookshot, and boomerang just not be, oh wait! Point is, a lot of these things kind of need to be there for it to be a true Zelda game. With that said though, I can't help but find that a lot of them are getting really stale. Take the hammer for example. It's been included in a lot of games in the series, and when it is, what do you do with it? Well, you can pound in switches, and you can pound it into things that'll shoot you up in the air, and that's about it. Okay, what about the bombs? Well, you can blow up walls with them, and you get the point. With many of the items having the same basic functionality in every game, people have started to get bored with them. There are two very important pieces in trying to solve this: new items and new functionality. Let's talk about new items first because it's an easier thing to explain. Actually, out of all the things I'm going to talk about on this list, this is probably the thing in the series that it does the best. It seems like every time a new Zelda game comes out, there's at least a couple of new items that bring something new to the table that we haven't seen before. One of my favorite examples of this is with the beetle in Skyward Sword. Not only was it an incredibly useful item throughout pretty much all of the game despite being the first main dungeon item, but it also did a good job of incorporating the game's signature motion controls to make it a useful item. There are two main problems with these items though. First, outside of their introduction in their dungeon, they often rarely see any use. Take the spinner for example. In Arbiter's Grounds, it provided a function that the series had never seen before, working as both a means of horizontal and vertical, albeit linear, travel. Outside of Arbiter's Grounds though, you use the thing like twice, maybe 3 or 4 times if you're going for a 100% run. This is a fate that the other first time items like the ball and chain, tornado rod, dominion rod, and grapple hook also have suffered. To fix this, I think these new items should be designed in a similar way to the beetle, so that they work with the central idea of the game and have either an incredibly useful use, or enough uses to where they can be incorporated into pretty much the entire game. Secondly, I think it's important that the series change up various aspects of the different items to make them feel fresh upon each new installment. Once again, this is something that the series has actually been doing pretty well with one of my favorite examples being the magnetized walls from the Iron Boots in Twilight Princess, being able to target multiple targets at once with the boomerang in Wind Waker, and of course the double claw shots in Twilight Princess. Hell, it even seems like Zelda Wii U is already doing this, with making the Sail Claws essentially an infinite Wind Waker Deku Leaf, and whatever the hell is going on with the bow vaulting thing. But all of this is mostly tied with puzzle solving. Another and very important part of the items is the way that they're used within combat. I have to agree with the masses here and say that the Wind Waker probably incorporated all of the items into combat overall the best, with the grappling hook being one of the best examples. As previously stated, the grappling hook was another new item that stopped being useful after the dungeon it was introduced in, yet it continued to be an item that I rarely switched out even after that point, and that can pretty much entirely be attributed to its use in combat. You see, if an enemy in Wind Waker was holding an item, like say a Dark Nut holding a Knight's Crest, you could use the grappling hook to nab that item for yourself. It's substantial additions to combat like that can really make an item feel like it isn't completely useless, even though in some cases, besides that, they really are. So, as a whole, the Zelda series is already doing a pretty decent job at making the items in the series feel more fresh, but I do think that if they were to try just a little bit more with the old and the new ones, the series would immensely benefit as a result. If the items could be considered staples to the Zelda series, then the dungeons are like the ink that's used to write the script. Let's just say, to those uninitiated, they're a pretty important part of the series. And once again, I find that there really isn't all that much to complain about with them. Hell, I'd argue that Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and A Link Between Worlds all offered some of the most interesting and fun dungeons that the series has ever seen, even more so than some pretty stiff competitions from some of the greats like A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. The art of a Zelda dungeon is something that the designers have managed to keep consistently interesting throughout pretty much the entire series, even to the point of pretty much perfecting it. So what could I possibly have to complain about with them? Well, they have the same problem that the Mario games have. The theming is getting really repetitive. It seems like whenever a new Zelda game comes out, we can pretty much always expect for there to be at least one forest, fire, water, ice, desert, creepy, and some kind of final recap dungeon or area. Take Skyward Sword for example. On top of having separate forest and water dungeons, there are both 2 fire and 2 desert dungeons. Sure, the desert ones incorporate other themes to them, but they're still desert dungeons at heart, and my deep love for fire levels doesn't distract from the fact that both the Earth Temple and the Fire Sanctuary are straight up fire levels with nothing else to them. Hell, the Fire Sanctuary might just be my favorite dungeon in the entire series, but it's still just a fire level. So, how exactly do we fix this? I mean, it's a problem that's loomed over the franchise for pretty much its entire existence, so it's kind of a common issue. I do have some ideas though. First, try to make more dungeons like the Snow Peak Ruins of the Ancient Cistern. While they do follow their respective tropes to a pretty great degree, they also incorporate some other interesting elements. I will say that even though I still do hate that stupid sliding block puzzle, I can't help but have been warmed up to the Snow Peak Ruins due to those Yetis and the story that's being told with them. And the large amounts of symbolism throughout the Ancient Cistern made some of the more boring parts of the dungeon go a long way to feeling like a more fun and interesting experience overall. Doing more dungeons that have a classic theme but more focus on something else, like how these two do it, are a great way to make them feel more fresh. My second idea would be to do something completely and totally original, either an art design or actual level design. One great example of the former is with inside Jabu Jabu's belly in Ocarina of Time. After two pretty underwhelming and easy dungeons, the last thing I was expecting was to be swallowed by a giant fish and have the entire dungeon take place inside them. It's a weird concept, but one that I feel like paid off in spades. With that said though, it did still follow the standard dungeon format, just with a really strange coat of paint. Like seriously, what entirely sober person would come up with this? Hint hint, I'm saying that Nintendo does drugs when they make their games. Now, the problem with talking about a completely off-the-wall dungeon is that I really don't have a good example. At least not yet. The best I can think of would be the Sky Keep from Skyward Sword, with how you had to move the rooms of the dungeon around in a sliding block puzzle. You know what, it was put to good use here, I'm fine with it. But even with this pretty great concept, it still reused the same elements already seen throughout the game, so it could hardly be considered unique. Sometime in one of these games though, I do think that we will see an entirely new concept for a dungeon, and one of the best aspects of the series will become even greater. And then they'll pound that into the ground and we'll be back to square one. The world of Hyrule is often considered to be one of the most recognizable and just generally captivating settings in video games, and as a whole, I can't help but agree. A lot of the time, Hyrule feels like a grand landscape, a great place where you can just ride around on your horse, kill a few baddies, and occasionally run into some of the weirdest fucking characters in video game history. Like, seriously, in Twilight Princess alone, there's a sexually suggestive lady that calls herself a princess and is obsessed with bugs, a duo of both an overconfident and clearly depressed clown that run a game involving cuckoos and a lake that you'd probably die from if you ever attempted to in real life, and whatever the fuck this thing is. Seriously, Link doesn't even know how to react to this thing when he first sees it. No, there's more of them? Well, they're still weird as hell. Getting back on topic, with all affection towards Hyrule, I'm sick and tired of it. I am tired of going to the same places in the same order, with maybe a couple more here and there depending on the game, and I'm tired of riding across this boring field over and over and over again. One theory for Zelda Wii U that I really like is that in the timeline, it takes place directly after Skyward Sword, and the ending where Zelda and Link stay on the ground and turn Hyrule into what we eventually see in Minish Cap, Ocarina, so on and so forth. It hasn't been confirmed obviously, but with the importance of the Sailcloth, I could very well see this being the case. And you know what? If you're colonizing Hyrule and learning the environment for the first time, that could be interesting. In fact, I think that that's a really great idea. With that said though, I'm not really sure if this is going as far in terms of what I want. What I want to see is another game that doesn't take place in Hyrule at all. Games like Wind Waker and Skyward Sword tried to not take place in Hyrule, but they didn't go all the way with it, and in turn, the refreshing feeling that could have come with that new setting was lost. Spirit Tracks also did this, and even though you weren't even technically in Hyrule, as it straight up wasn't, the fact that the place was called New Hyrule and that it has pretty much all of the same areas as Hyrule makes you forget about it. Conversely, with Majora's Mask, with the new setting of Termina, Nintendo was not only willing to make an environment that felt different geography and culture-wise, but also tackled themes that, through the moon and the effects that it has on the characters, probably wouldn't have ever been seen in a game that took place in Hyrule. I guess what I'm trying to say here is to, well, leave Hyrule. Bring us to a new world like Termina, a world with new ideas and new concepts, one that Nintendo wouldn't be willing to do if the game was set in Hyrule. As I've said, it seems like that's not going to be happening in Zelda Wii U, but for the future, I think that these games could lend themselves to some much more interesting themes, characters, environments, stories, and maybe even dungeons and items if the entire game was to have a new setting. Or, you know, maybe you could just go back to Termina. That'd work too. Ocarina of Time. Love it, or for whatever reason hate it, you can't deny that it's one of the most treasured video games in gaming history. Hell, it's not even close to my favorite Zelda, and yet I still respect it as a landmark of both action-adventure games and video games as a whole. With all that said, if one was to choose the biggest addition that this game made, I think most people would agree that it was the invent of Z targeting, or L targeting, or ZL targeting. You get the point. With the invent of
insert button here
targeting, combat went from what would have been a clunky, confusing mess to something more focused, manageable, and yes, complicated. You see, in the older Zelda games, you had a sword slash and a spin. That's it. Now, with
insert button here
targeting, you have slashes, stabs, jump slashes, shield slashes, and even more taking items into account. At the time, this was huge and a major change from anything that people were used to. With that said, since the invent of
insert button here
targeting, the series has refused to innovate. It's definitely changed over time, but I'd hardly say that those things were changes that benefited the industry as a whole the way that
insert button here
targeting was. I know that I said that it refuses to innovate, but I was surprised to realize that the combat between all these games actually has changed quite a bit over the course of the games. I mean, the 2D games have stayed about the same, but if you haven't figured it out by now, this video is mostly about the 3D entries, and those games are all over the place when it comes to combat. After Ocarina, Majora was a marginal step forward, with all the different races having slightly different combat, but it was just that, slightly. I mean, their unique attributes were pretty cool, but considering that Hylian Link had all those attributes covered better with different items, it's only a marginal upgrade. Then came Wind Waker, and this is definitely the smallest change made in all the games, but I think it had the biggest impact out of all of them, the parry. You see, sometimes when fighting enemies, the A button icon will flash, and if the incredibly unclear button is pressed, Link will roll behind the enemy, doing huge damage and sometimes knocking off the armor. It may sound like a small thing, but it had a huge impact on how larger enemies were fought, and made big groups of enemies more fun to fight. Finally, there's Twilight Princess. To put it in a nutshell, this game added many more mechanics similar to the parry that could have made the combat more complex, engaging, and tactical. But it didn't. Why not? Because besides the very first one, they're all entirely optional. Because of this, the only one of these skills that is ever commonly used in enemies is the ending blow, aka the only one that you actually have to learn. Now, to an extent, I can see why these are optional, as they're just another thing that rewards exploration, but the amount of missed potential that came from this far outweighs that. And then Skyward Sword happened. Okay, I know that I've been beating up on this game a lot, but honestly, this is one area where I do think it generally succeeded. For what it was, the sword combat worked pretty well. I know that a lot of people had accuracy problems with it, but honestly, it always read my movements just fine. With that said, I'm not here to praise the game, I'm here to talk about the problems with it. First, because of the emphasis on sword combat, it got fleshed out way more than anything else. So while the sword combat felt well thought out and intricate, fighting with other items was almost worthless. That sounds like an exaggeration, but honestly, the only item that I ever remember using in combat and having it be effective was the bow, and you get that a pretty good way through the game, so you're so used to exclusively using the sword that doesn't really change your thought process when fighting. My second complaint may just sound like me bitching about stuff, but I don't think the motion controls were that good of a fit for Zelda. I mean, I like the IR pointing in Twilight Princess and the gyroscope aiming in all the remakes, but those things are just fine because they weren't intrusive. They feel like an addition rather than having the game be built around them. With the sword combat though, it's clear that the entire game was made and designed to accommodate it, and in turn it gives the game a time to feel. Up to this point, the Zelda games felt pretty timeless. With this go, that feeling was taken away. I think that pretty much everyone agrees that motion controls in any sense besides gyroscope are just a passing fad, so in 10 years, how the hell is this game going to be adapted to a modern controller? Tangents though. Getting back on topic, what do I think could be done to fix this? Well, putting more emphasis on items instead of just the sword, but I've already talked about that. I would say that it'd be cool if they let you use different primary weapons besides just the sword, but that's never gonna happen. Honestly, even though I'm not a big fan of the video in question, I do have to agree with Egoraptor on this and say that the emphasis on waiting in combat is just really obnoxious. It's not even funny like that one boss fighting Kirby, it's just boring. As I said, to make a combat experience fun, you need to have the player fight dynamically, and yeah, I guess this is technically fighting dynamically because you are fighting based off the enemy's actions, but considering that the pattern is always exactly the same, they might as well just be slashing randomly. I get that my thoughts here must seem really disjointed, but honestly, I'm not really sure what they could do to improve the combat in these games. My last idea, though, is that they need to increase the emphasis on defense. You pretty much always had a shield in this game, but rarely has it ever been necessary. Basically, make the enemy's attacks more vicious so that not using the shield would mean the player's certain death.
Or you could just make it like Dark Souls. Probably could have saved you like 5 minutes just by saying that, but whatever.
I think George Carlin put it best.
Some people are really fucking stupid. Look at it this way. Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
The general masses of people are really, really stupid. We've been over this in the difficulty segment. This, however, leads to one other, large, more annoying problem. Look, I can take an easy game just fine. I mean, I consider myself a fan of the Kirby series. Of course I'm okay with easy games. I prefer for that not to get into my Zelda, but you know, when it fits the game's overall design, I can't really complain. Hand-holding, regardless of anything, is just annoying though. For as cryptic and stupid as I find the first Zelda game to be, I have to wonder how we went from a game like that basically required a guide if you were to get anywhere, to now with these new games where there's a character whose sole purpose for existing is to tell you what to do. I mean, companions are a common thing in video games. I mean, you got your Yoshi, your Daxter, dog meat. Point is, the companion is not something I've heard of for games. With that said, Zelda, to be blatant, has run the concept into the ground. Ever since Ocarina of Time, every Zelda game in 3D has featured a companion character of some sort, ranging from tolerable to "Oh God, get it away!" Ah! The main problem with them is that they never shut up. They're always wanting to tell you about how to do something, or where to go, or "Oh my God, that your health is low." Like, seriously, the beeping wasn't enough? Like, seriously, think about it. While developing Skyward Sword, someone at Nintendo thought to themselves, people are too stupid to notice the beeping corresponding to their health being low, and just that their health is being low to begin with. Let's put in another layer of beeping to make certain that they know that their health is low. That won't get incredibly annoying incredibly quickly and alienate a lot of our fan base. So how do you fix this? Well, the first instinct would just be to get rid of them. I mean, the majority of 2D Zelda games don't have a companion character, and they seem to be going just fine without them. And it's about at this point that you're expecting me to say, but that wouldn't work because of reasons 1, 2, 7, and 94, but honestly, I think that could work just fine. As long as the player has some way of keeping track of what it is that they're supposed to be doing, I see no reason for a companion character. In fact, that'd probably be the end of the segment if it wasn't for one of the games, Twilight Princess. Midna is generally seen as the best companion in the Zelda series, and it's pretty easy to see why. As opposed to the generally boring and lifeless companions from past games, Midna has a distinctly cynical and interesting personality, plus the fact that she actually helped out in gameplay. But there is one trait to Midna that seems to be overlooked a lot of the time. She actually has importance in the storyline. Think about it for a minute. If many of these characters were to be entirely taken out of the game, what impact would it have? Not gameplay-wise, because tying it back into the theme of people being stupid, some people argue that
Insert button here.
targeting wouldn't have been possible without Navi or Tattle, I mean based on the story. While some characters impact it more than others, you'd be surprised how often they have little to no importance. Midna, on the other hand, is a vital component to the story of Twilight Princess. Hell, she is the Twilight Princess. One of the most emotional moments in Zelda history is when you have to carry her to be revived as a wolf through Hyrule Field. Oh, and also, in her humanoid form, let's just say she's kind of attractive. In short, the Zelda companion is a very delicate matter. If they aren't able to be worked into the game in a way that feels meaningful, then they might as well just be one of those Sheikah Stone tutorial things. If they are though, they could go on to be one of the most memorable and loved characters in their respective game, and even the series as a whole. As long as they're not Fi. Because I really fucking hate Fi. What is the story of Zelda? I don't mean in details, but stripped down to its base level, what is the story of a Zelda game? You're a green dude, you run around hitting stuff, get triangles, kill an evil dude, save the bitch. I apologize, that last part was insensitive. Point is, Zelda games have a pretty common storyline. The story of a lone hero going on a quest to defeat an evil thing and save a princess is almost as old as time, but The Legend of Zelda is one of the quintessential examples of it. In this series, this tale has been told in such a variety of ways as the princess getting kidnapped, the princess becomes a ninja and then gets kidnapped, the princess is a pirate, but then isn't a pirate and then gets kidnapped, and the princess gets turned to stone. Okay, scratch what I said earlier, these games have no variety when it comes to the plotline. I mean, save for some element of randomness like a parallel world consumed by darkness like 8 times, or fucking trains, these games have the exact same goddamn storyline. Going back to Majora's Mask and Termina, the plotline with the moon makes for a very interesting and heartfelt story when taking the world and characters into account. The interesting thing though is that the story isn't really all that different. I mean, switch out a damsel with an entire country, region, I'm not really sure, and you go from the plotline of Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask. And yet, with all that and the themes that come with it, the game is infinitely more interesting than it would be otherwise. What we need, once again, is more of that. The plot in question doesn't need to be particularly different from the norm, but it needs to be different enough to where it feels fresh. As I said earlier, it's looking like Zelda Wii U is going to take place during the establishment of Hyrule, which, as I said earlier, sounds like a really interesting concept for a game. It seems to even take what I was saying even further in how it's not just some dynamic swaps for the existing formula, but an entirely new story altogether. Plus, it may just manage to make the aging land of Hyrule feel fresh again. I'm sure there will be some kind of big bad as Demise's curse is still on the land from the end of Skyward Sword, but the large amount of land that we've never seen before does indicate that this is a much more vast Hyrule than we've ever seen. Then again, that's all just assuming that this game is even in Hyrule in the first place. To this point, they haven't ever said that it is, and none of the landmarks stick out as any of Hyrule's landmarks, so who knows? For all we know, this could be an entirely new land. Maybe even one that'll have a bigger emotional impact than Termina. But as long as there are bunny ears that make you run faster, I don't care. One of the largest debates in recent gaming has been that of linear versus non-linear. I'm not entirely sure why, but for some reason using the word linear to describe a game has kind of become an insult in favor of more open-worldy sandbox type games. This is really strange when we consider the fact that some of the most loved games in recent memories, like The Last of Us and Walking Dead, are, for all intents and purposes, very linear games, but hey, this is the internet where hypocrisy runs rampant. Personally, I don't think that one style of game is necessarily better than the other, as long as they're done well, of course. With that said though, I think that certain franchises fit pretty well into either of these two and shouldn't leave them. I mean, people would be flipping their shit if it turned out that GTA 5 or Fallout 4 or Elder Scrolls 6 were hallway simulators, and I know that I wouldn't be okay with that for Fallout because that's the only one of those games I care about, but whatever. And then we get to Zelda. The progression of the series in this regard is really kinda strange. I've talked about how Zelda 1 is frustratingly non-linear, but after that, with each entry, it feels like the games got more and more linear. With A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, it feels like these changes were made just to make things seem more manageable. I mean, sure, Zelda 1 had a big world for the time, but how much stuff was there actually to do? Not all that much, and the same is true for a lot of the games after that. But then, once again, Majora's Mask came in and was awesome. You see, the dungeons are laid out for you. The game doesn't screw around when it comes to telling you what to do and where to go for the dungeons. However, anyone who has played that game knows that the meat of it is in the side quests, and with those, you have to figure it out for yourself. My favorite example is with Romani Ranch. So there's this boulder blocking the place for the first 2 days, but it's broken on the third. When you go there on the third, you find this little girl who seems to have something wrong with her, and you're just thinking, what the hell happened here? So once you have the means, you go to the ranch on the first day, and you find out that fucking aliens have been attacking. Or maybe they're ghosts. I'm not really sure. Point is, this one little bit of intrigue led the player on to one of the more major events in the game, and that's what an open world comes down to. Intrigue. Do you know why Twilight Princess's overworld was boring as hell? It's because not only was there barely anything in it, you knew that there was barely anything in it because of the lack of things that would lead you to believe that there was anything in it. Same goes for Skyward Sword, and to a lesser extent Wind Waker. At least there was some stuff in that one. Just the fact that you can be adventuring and stumble upon a giant squid to fight or a fairy who will give you an upgrade makes it infinitely better than the game where an island with a bunch of bugs is the second most notable location in the overworld side quest wise. What I've been saying here mostly just applies to side quests though. What could be done to make the main game feel adventurous? To answer that, I have to point you to this one tiny fucking minute detail in A Link Between Worlds that makes the game feel infinitely more adventurous than A Link to the Past. You see, in A Link to the Past, when you get to the Dark World, the game's just like, hey, here's all these dungeons you need to go to in the order you need to go to them in. In A Link Between Worlds, it's much the same, except there are no numbers. It just tells you where they are. Combined with the ability to buy items, and this is pretty much the most open Zelda game ever. Or at least the most open Zelda game that actually functioned. It begs the question though, how much further could an open world be taken before the game feels cryptic? Could a world like this work without any indicators of where to go next? Well, I think the answer to that second question is a pretty big no, but keep in mind, an indicator does not need to be text. The Zelda games have a big problem of telling and not showing, giving all this text of why things and places are important instead of actually making them feel important. If the scope and design of the overworld emphasize certain areas, it could go a long way to making the game feel more like an organic experience, kinda like how it was in Journey. With all of this said and done, I have to reiterate that The Legend of Zelda is still my favorite video game series of all time. I'm honestly kinda surprised about how much I was able to complain about it. At this point, who the hell knows if Zelda Wii U will be good or not? I can't deny that I am concerned about it, but I'm still loving everything that we've seen of it so far. It's undoubtedly my most hyped game for the future, though there really isn't all that much that it has to compete with for me. It's pretty much just Splatoon, and while that's really fun and creative, this is Zelda, and for me that's pretty hard to compete with. I'm not sure how much of what I've talked about here is actually going to be implemented, but from how much Aonuma is talking about emphasizing that things will be changed from past installments, I have confidence that much of it will.
Hey guys, Legendary Sponge here, back again with Enslate time, yay! So first there's some things I need to talk about before we get to video plugs, and the first thing is that this video took freaking forever, and I am sorry about that. Basically what happened was my computer blue screened, and I'm using the same computer, but I'm in the process of trying to get a new computer that'll let me do more editing, allow me to do more high quality stuff and try to get it out quicker. Because this thing, it served me pretty well, but it's really not that good of a computer, if I'm being frank. So, that's sad, but you know what? It's coming out, I'm trying to get this out, so just for the time being, I think that I'll be fine just trying to get more videos out. But in the future, try and get a new rig. Another thing is subscribers. This is probably the first countdown that's coming out that is going to be coming to your guys' sub box for probably the majority of you actually, because the vast majority of my subs right now are people who just like started watching me right after my top 10 or top 5 Smash Bros. DLC characters came out. So let me just say, for anyone that's a new sub and anyone that's been watching me since day one, I'm not sure if there's actually anyone that's been watching me since the very first video of mine. I'm not sure if anyone's left, but if you've been watching me for a ridiculously long time, like say Stelly, thank you to you. I appreciate it. I really love you guys' support, and this channel wouldn't exist if it wasn't for some of you just sticking with me for so long. And I still would probably be a little demotivated if it wasn't for a lot of you new guys coming in and kind of validating what I've been doing recently. So I appreciate that. Now let's get into video plugs. First is going to be the video that I'm sure the majority of you have seen, which is my top 5 Smash Bros. DLC characters. It's, you could say it's a pretty big video, 42,000 views. It's kind of absurd, honestly. I have no idea why that video even got so popular. Like, if anyone knows that it got linked, that if someone put it in an end slate like this, or if it just shows up in suggested videos, I'm pretty sure that's why, but you know, if someone knows, please tell me, because I'm actually very confused on this subject. But still, if you want to watch it again, hey, it's right there. For the second plug, we have the Pokken Tournament character discussion video that I made with my friend BenjiBuddy3, or Ben, a couple months back. We talk about different Pokemon that we'd like to see be playable in it. It's a fun little video. It's probably about as long as this one, so it's a bit of a time investment, but still. Yeah, just another thing. If you've managed to sit through this entire video, my god, you are amazing, because this is a really long video. I'm not entirely sure exactly how long this video is turning out to be, but it's at least like 35 minutes long. It's ridiculous. So, if you've managed to sit through the whole thing, my god, I owe you one, honestly. So good job there. And for my final video plug, we have an actual plug for a smaller YouTuber, which is Keen TV. He started making videos a couple months back. He makes videos actually like a lot. Like if you sub to him, he's probably gonna push out at least like one video a week that you want to watch. You know, a lot of his stuff is like unboxing or like gameplay stuff, which is maybe a little less interesting, but you know, every so often he does make videos that like I still watch a lot of his stuff. Just the other day he made his list of the top 20 Nintendo rides that he'd like to see after the Universal Studios deal came in, so yeah, that was a pretty fun video. Specifically the video that I have here is his top 10 characters that he'd like to see in Smash Brothers for DLC, which, you know, kind of similar to the one I made, but whatever. This is a particularly cool video because over the next few months he's actually going to be making, he's already made one actually, videos where he goes into the characters on the list more in depth. So, you know, it's got long-term value. So, at the very least, I think that you should watch that one and keep an eye on him for those videos, because the first one he made, which was of, you know, I'll just say it was of Tingle. It's a fun little video, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the ones that he's going to make. So, yeah, that's Keen TV. He does all kinds of stuff. I'd recommend checking him out. He's only got like 30 subs right now, so let's bring that number up, guys. Come on. So I guess that's pretty much all I got to say. So thank you for watching, and I promise that this next video that I'm working on will not take nearly as long as this one to come out. Like I made the trailer for this that came out like early February. This is coming out like mid-March, or mid-May. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry about that. As I've said, I got into problems with the computer, but still. So with all that said, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video, which will be my top 5 most hated characters in video games. See you guys next time.